Welcome to Quantum Arc Live. Today we are going to talk about distance learning, but a perspective from the educators and administrators. So today with us, we have Rebecca Gergel, who is an 8th grade science teacher here in Clark County, as well as Roger West, who is a principal at Face Middle School. So guys, welcome. So, Becky, Roger, so nice to have you guys. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
We're glad. Yeah. Very excited, mate.
So, you good?
Yeah.
So, I just wanted to talk to you guys about an overview. I mean, obviously, this pandemic is affecting everybody. And so, with education in particular, I mean, I think it's kind of affecting everyone differently. I know different schools and different teachers and classrooms are kind of all taking different approaches as this was kind of thrown in, and not everyone was necessarily set up to handle this. And then, of course, obviously, you're dealing with trying to still maybe educate the students, but also now dealing with the parents and trying to help educate them to maybe help access and use this. So I just wanted to talk to you guys and get your perspective. But kind of before we dive all into that, I'd love to just kind of have you briefly introduce yourself and what it is that you normally do. So Roger, could you start?
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Roger West, and I am the proud principal at Wilbur and Teresa Fest Middle School in Las Vegas, Nevada. I, like everyone else, found out literally hours, we left school on March 13th, and we thought something was maybe happening, but we're not at all ready for the major change that happened on Monday, March 16th, and just incredibly proud of how our teachers and staff, first of all, responded right away to embrace just as much normal as possible. And how our parents and students, for the most part, have responded as well in my belief, to the best of their ability for what they can do.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping to dive a little bit deeper into some of those things in particular, but that's crazy just to, leave for the weekend and be like, yeah, you're going to come back to school, or maybe there might be some small changes, and then just to have everything completely change. Rebecca, can you give us maybe a little bit on the educator side, kind of what happened for you guys?
It was essentially pretty much the same thing. I work at the same school, and we had set up for a bunch of activities. We had actually, the last week that we were at school, our 8th grade science kids just took their end of year big standardized assessment. And so we were rolling back into the classroom. We were super excited to start doing all the cool hands-on stuff at the end of the year. And as Roger said, Sunday night, we get a call that says, guess what? You're not going back for a while. So it was heartbreaking because we didn't know that the last day that we were with our kids was going to be the last day with those kids. So that's kind of where I feel with that.
Yeah, that's got to be hard. So, I mean, talk about like the curriculum, like especially what you're mentioning. I mean, there's a lot of hands-on activity, especially for science. How does one go about transitioning that to a distance learning? The students are at home now and you're not getting to have that daily interaction with them.
That's definitely been our biggest struggle. Luckily, I have an amazing group in my science department, and my 8th grade science teachers that I work with are really strong, and they are really flexible. And so the first thing that we did was we came up with activities that the kids could do at home that were all kinds of different modalities and different things that they could do. So some of them were just taking notes, some of them were watching videos and answering questions, and then some of them were making things and creating things. And then after the first couple of weeks, We analyzed what activities the kids were more likely to complete. We haven't really had a lot of students interacting and participating. I'd probably say on my best activities, I have about 86 kids, which sounds like a lot, but I have 175. So that's where it kind of gets a little harder. And so we kind of analyzed the data because we're science teachers and we love data. And we looked at what the kids were more likely participating in, and then we kind of planned from there on. So we noticed they like doing online simulations, and so we found a couple of websites that have online simulations that work with Chromebooks, so the kids were able to access those. They really like creating things, as most people do, and so we've done a lot of little projects where they do a Google Slides and they have to pick a plant or an animal and answer questions that are based on our standards that we've covered. So it's definitely, there's been a lot of creativity and a lot of outside the box thinking that's had to happen for this to be successful.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, so you guys are working kind of as an entire science department to kind of come up with everything for your different students, not like necessarily just your class specific. Like, so you're working with your team. Is that correct?
Oh,
So
correct.
are you
And
guys
we
finding
have
that
really strong team. Sorry.
that's good. That's really good. Are you finding that then with other departments? I mean, I don't know if Roger, you can talk to that more. I mean,
Sure.
English department, stuff like that. Is that kind of how you're seeing it across different learning sections?
So I think all of our all of the teachers on campus are organized by what we call PLCs, professional learning communities. So depending on the size of that, I think that also then determined how well they transitioned into this. So in science, for example, every team is 3 teachers: sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade. So I think there has been a lot of communication amongst um, the smaller teams and in terms of what they do, and how they've transitioned assignments into this distance learning plan. So I just to back up though for a second, um, I think something that's important to establish is that the decision was made essentially in our state that public schools would not necessarily move forward teaching curriculum, that we paused and we placed a focus on third quarter assignments, which we were only a week into fourth quarter when this happened. So our first focus became to help all students get their their third quarter grade up. And then as teachers like Miss Gergel and her team, what they were kind of able to creatively do is, instead of just going back and rehashing things that had already been taught or things that, units that had already been done, they were able to sort of creatively move forward, and introduce new ideas, but still make the focus be about improving or replacing student grades throughout third quarter, and how they could use that curriculum that way. So I know with science, it's unique, math, social studies, places where, there's specific curriculum. I know that English, for example, their standards are end of year mastery. So a teacher could continue to work on, plot analysis, things like that, characters, um, either looking at old material or introducing, like, for example, the district provided resources, and several of those were short stories, things like that they could use um, to continue learning. That was kind of our goal, was to extend and expand the learning that had already happened. And then if unique opportunities came up, then great. Then a teacher like Becky and her team are going to take advantage of that.
Okay, that's interesting. How regarding, you're saying focusing on third quarter, I mean, do you guys foresee any of these issues of anything that was supposed to be taught fourth quarter having effects, or have you guys talked about how that's then going to impact, advancing into, the next year's grade, or is there learning, is there certain things that students are missing out on, or just like, Becky, you had said that you're only receiving, a percentage of your students who are fully engaging. What do you guys, have you talked about that, or what are you guys seeing regarding any of that?
Sure. Yes. The short answer is yes. Um, there are conversations going on right now at the district level, at the curriculum level, where they are looking at fourth quarter standards and looking at first quarter standards and making the determination of how can how can they help when we return to school in August? How can we help bridge that gap between what was missed in fourth quarter? So let's say, for example, Becky's going to have seventh graders who missed out on part of fourth quarter, and now they'll move into eighth grade. How can some of her standards be either merged, or how can they be blended so that students are getting essentials that they needed from fourth quarter during the first quarter? And then in areas of math, and there are skills, mathematical skills that need to be taught, and so that's looking at the standard and how a math skill might be taught, in seventh grade as a 2-step problem. In eighth grade, then it becomes a 3 or 4-step problem, or complicated. I wasn't a math teacher, but
Gotcha. So kind of carrying over and start teaching more
yes.
stuff in the first quarter of the next school year. So
Yeah,
it's going to be an interesting load for the teachers, I'm sure.
For sure. That's for sure. And Becky, if you want to think about or talk about, because she, as she said, she has this awesome responsibility in eighth grade of teaching, of preparing students for a summative national assessment that is based on 6th, 7th, and 8th grade science standards.
My team actually, I want to say the third week that we were at home, we had a meeting where we sat on FaceTime and we kind of came up with a game plan, knowing that 8th grade is when kids get the assessment that goes into the star rating of the school. And not only that, but it's knowledge that kids need to be successful in high school. So we actually had already kind of started sketching out a plan for next year. And so we were able to start looking at some of the things that the kids are going to miss and trying to kind of come up with interesting and fun ways to implement them into what we were teaching. We were talking about maybe doing a couple of mini lessons, which is like a 10, 15-minute the activity that you spend on something that might be review. And we were kind of hoping that we could mix the standards the kids didn't get with our standards in small little bites so that they still get the information, but it's not so overwhelming that they're learning 7th grade and 8th grade in first quarter next year.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's great that you guys are, trying to be proactive and really take those steps now to kind of connect that. So if we can switch to kind of talk about technology as a whole, you mentioned Chromebooks with some students and, trying to come up with these different learning modalities. How much of the use of technology, is it something that the students, are they adapting to that easy? You also have the technology, you're now needing to communicate across maybe to your entire staff or all the teachers, or how are you guys using technology, and is there a learning curve, or was it fairly easy to kind of jump into doing that?
For our 8th graders, I think that they just jumped right in. I don't really feel like there were a lot of them that didn't already know how to use all the technology that we had planned on using. Most of that, big shout out goes to our English department, because they are superstars when it comes to Google Classroom and having the kids know exactly how to turn things in and what to do. The first week, we actually went through our rosters and we made sure that every one of our students was on our Google Classrooms before we even started posting anything. and I only had 2 kids that weren't already logged on. So for me, that felt like a really big success.
Wow.
And I definitely, right? I definitely think that that had to do with just how much our English and our math departments use Google Classroom, because we only really used it to
Yeah.
post notes for kids that were absent in the past. And so I think the learning curve really was for us. It took me about 10 days before I realized that I could return assignments with grades to them. And so like it was definitely, it's been more that we're learning how to use the technology and they already know what's up.
Yeah.
There have been a couple of parents that I've had to send YouTube videos to on like how to attach files and things like that. But really, I've only had about 3 kids this whole time that have had technical difficulties. So it's definitely the grown-ups that are struggling with this.
It's usually the case. That's pretty great though that, that technology is there and it's just like, okay, how do we, transition really quick to start utilizing it? I know we had a high schooler, and so getting those constant emails about being like, sign into Google Classroom, sign into Google Classroom. And I don't think they had nearly the success you did in terms of having as many people registered on Google Classroom. That seemed like that was the constant struggle for them, was just getting people to connect to their individual classes. But that's so great that you experienced that success. Do you guys see using Google Classroom more in the future, post-pandemic, back into the school routine?
Yeah,
I
I'll jump
definitely
in
think
really.
we will. Oh.
Quick. Um, yeah, I'll jump in really quick just to say I've heard from many teachers that they're hooked, right? They after spending some time with this, they see really what we could talk about as like the flipped classroom, right? Where you can give information in a digital format and have students interact with it, and then when they come to class, you can truly have that engaged or more highly engaged conversation with students, instead of the teacher having to spend the class time um, um, initially teaching the material or doing that, old school direct instruction, lecture notes, things, information kids need in order to be able to talk about the material or to work with the material. But I think most teachers, not even just at FES, I think everywhere, are pretty excited about the possibility of what coming back next year could look like.
That's cool. I love to see how so many different industries are adapting. I mean, the world is thrown into, this pandemic and a lot of chaos in a lot of situations. And it's great to see kind of how people are really stepping up to, the different technologies that exist out there and how they can utilize that and really kind of push forward. And we're seeing that in a lot of different industries. So it's great to see, that education also is really kind of grasping on to, Google Classroom and other, these online things to truly help educate. So that's really cool. So kind of talking about, end of the school year now, those grades are being finalized. I don't know, teachers are needing to wrap up, schools needing to wrap up. How does that look for you guys? I don't know, Roger, if you want to take that first.
So I think that I I think the biggest issue has been um, students looking at their third quarter, right, and having the chance to raise that. I mean, Becky can talk like specifically, for example, how many out of her whatever 170 kids took advantage of that opportunity. What I think I've heard in our staff meetings and our virtual staff meetings is that it's a lot of students who were maybe already at a C or a B and wanted to raise that grade, to a B or an A. It wasn't, unfortunately, as many students as we wanted that were maybe in the D or F range that have been jumping on and taking advantage. Of course, some have, but I think that that was sort of the goal, was the do no harm, essentially, and to give, and it was very important to our region superintendent, which I think became the message across the district, but I know for sure in our region, was that we give the same opportunity to the kid with a F that we're giving to a kid with a B. If we are giving the chance to raise a grade, which really the grade isn't what it's about anymore. It's not about, if you know it, it's about when you know it. And so if students didn't know it during that 9-week period, they now have the chance to demonstrate the learning. And so rewarding them with a grade is just, it's not really a reward. Actually, that's the wrong thing to say. It's accurately representing what they know and can show for the grade book.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's
I don't know if Becky
interesting.
wanna talk.
I would love to potentially learn more about how, different schools, I don't know if high school, if you can even comment on that, if that's similar, or if we're seeing, maybe an increase of people needing to do summer schools or anything like that to make up, those DNF students who didn't take advantage of those opportunities to kind of boost their grade up during this last bit.
Sure. Yeah, there definitely was. All summer school this summer is going to be virtual. So that will continue that, but it won't be like we did for the last 6 weeks, 7 weeks. It will be truly like assignments graded through a virtual platform using digital curriculum sources. So I don't know if there'll be an increase. There could be a lot of parents who are like, okay, now we have the opportunity for them to truly be graded for the work they're doing, and want to take advantage. The district also reduced the price greatly. It was the price of summer school was, I believe, $110 or $125, something like that, and it's been reduced down to $70 per class that they take. So hoping, I think, to encourage students to do that. But I think that if a student was being considered for retention, the last 7 weeks didn't change that conversation, right? If they were, I think that's come up. I've heard some people talk about, oh, well, now, every student's just getting pushed along now. And that's not the case. If there were students that we had concerns about moving up a grade, and I know this, for sure at elementary as well, that those conversations are still happening and decisions being made. The closure didn't change that.
That's good to know. We had a question come in. Do you anticipate any higher percentage of students dropping out of high school because of this pandemic? And again, I know you guys are on the middle school level, but I don't know, if the conversations
Sure.
you've had with fellow educators.
Yeah, my whole career before this was in high school. I was a high school teacher and a high school administrator. I don't think so. I think that when looking at the economy, looking at just the situation specifically here in Vegas, when the last recession hit, and I was a high school teacher, what I found is that more students were looking to job training. More students were looking. I had more students that had already left that were getting bachelor's degrees that stayed and got master's degrees because the job market, wasn't great. And so I would think that in this situation, depending on, what I would think students would be looking more towards increasing their job opportunities for when the economy begins to come back.
Yeah, hopefully that's, we will see that. I think there's going to be a lot, there's a lot of unknown at the moment. And so it's curious to kind of see how the next, few months are really going to play out and how those, it affects different people and different industries. And hopefully that makes sense to our younger students as they're entering the real world.
I did think though, if maybe the question is, after the last 6 weeks, do I think there might be some students who try maybe doing online high school or doing an online program I think that could increase. I think probably I think that's something that some kids have thought about before, some families have thought about before, and just not had the opportunity to do. My only caution there is that, again, like we said, is this wasn't truly an online. If you've ever taken an online class, in some ways it's, you know, 5 times harder than taking, the class in person. And so I would hope that there's not like a false sense out there that, oh, I've been doing online learning. I had a Chromebook at home and I checked in with my teachers and, I could handle this. This could be the format that I do school in, because what we just did is not really true blended online learning.
Yeah, the self-motivation to do that work when you're not sitting down and having a teacher, I'm sure, be like, did you do
Yeah.
that? Did you do that?
Yeah.
So Becky, what about you regarding kind of wrapping up the school year? What are you seeing? How is that looking for you as a teacher?
We're really in the home stretch now. We created a end of the year project for our students to do. All the activities that we've given them are for extra credit, so they get to kind of choose if they're going to do them or not. We did a ton of classwork activities for them to do for extra credit, and then this week they have a culminating project. And we decided to do this because we usually do it at the end of the year. And earlier for first semester, we did a culminating project for our semester exam, and it worked out really well, and the kids really enjoyed it. So what we're doing, since we can't give semester exams, we are doing a project where kids have to tell us what they learned about each subject that we did teach, and kind of the key points, and backing it up with scientific evidence. And I've seen a couple of them. Some of the kids have sent me kind of rough drafts so far, and they're looking really good. And I think it's really nice that the kids are able to have a platform to show what they know. Unfortunately, I wish that it was something that we could be doing together so that I could be helping them with it, but beggars can't be choosers. But no, the hardest part is there's no closure. I have such a great group of kids this year, and I have a bunch of them that um, have had rough backgrounds and don't have a lot of adults in their lives that they get to spend time with. And so that to me has been the biggest bummer, is that, I've had kids come to me and tell me that they hate the weekend because it's, everyone's at work all the time and they don't get to see anybody. So they'd rather be at school than be at home on the weekends. And so it's those kids that I wish that I could have closure with. Kids that I feel like I grew a really strong relationship this year with that haven't even logged on at all. That's heartbreaking for me. And that's kind of the hard part about the end of the school year like this.
Yeah, I gotta imagine that's got to be difficult. I mean, you guys develop such a relationship with your students, and just like you said, you're there for them, and in so many students when there's not necessarily a lot of other adults who are, and to really just kind of have that, you expect to see everyone again on Monday, and then you just don't, and that's your last day. That's got to be rough. And so we actually have Wendy who just joined with us. So I just wanted to say hi to Wendy really quick, and just talk to Wendy. Hi.
Hi.
So Wendy, thank you for joining us. We're kind of we're close to wrapping up, but I wanted to just talk to you. One of the things that we were just speaking about was some of the insights regarding student retention and how that's kind of working, on the middle school and high school level. But you are an elementary school teacher, is that correct?
I am.
And so I didn't know if you had any interesting insights regarding kind of that retention with your elementary school students during this level of disconnect.
It really kind of is staying the same as it was before. If they were going to be retained before, we're still looking at retaining them now unless they've been able to develop more skills that'll make them more successful as they move into that middle school. If we weren't planning on retaining them, we're obviously not going to retain them now.
What about engaging with elementary school students? I got to imagine it's, probably a little bit more difficult, where you also maybe are needing to engage with the parents as well as the student a lot more to try and get them to engage in maybe some activities or classwork.
Yeah, actually, because I'm in a different school district, we are actually able to still use Zoom, and it was a pretty seamless. It was pretty seamless for us in my classroom because I have actually used Google Classroom a lot and stuff. So it was a pretty easy transition for my kids. They were used to already getting on and doing writing activities and things like that. So, we hit the ground kind of running out here in Nye County, and they only missed a week of school. The governor announced on Sunday, which was when we were expected to come back from our spring break. So we didn't start any of our fourth quarter in our classrooms. And so by Tuesday, our district had a plan. On Wednesday, we went with our grade level. Thursday, we passed out Chromebooks to students, and we went live on Monday. So it was kind of a crazy time for us. And I've noticed the longer we've been off, the less interaction I have. I've got 26 students, but I regularly interact with 14 of them all the time. And I have 100% class participation when it comes to phone calls and being able to get a hold of parents and talk to them and check on kids and see if they need any help through the phone. Unfortunately, even though we gave out Chromebooks and things right away, some parents just don't have internet service. So there is that divide of equity that we are still struggling with, I think, in Nevada in general, because not everybody has access to online. And so obviously the kids that are able to interact with me, get online with me, and do reading activities are going to do better than the kids that just talk to me on the phone and call me when they need me. We do a lot of math activities and stuff, and that's where kids kind of tend to struggle because we did miss some of our core teaching in fourth quarter. We didn't get to everything. So it's definitely a worry as we send them on to the middle school without those skills.
Yeah, that's got to be a hard thing for sure, but it sounds like it's, really similar kind of across the board. I mean, even though you're in a different county and in an elementary school, it's still that the students who are actually logging on and participating are the ones that are really, benefiting. So hopefully, students will, continue to do that, and parents and other adults, can help push the importance, of education to different students of all ages. So kind of just to wrap everything up, we have the school year finishing, but we don't entirely know when this pandemic is ending. We've started some initial phases of opening up, but there's talks that maybe there'll be an even worse thing in the fall. So what about the uncertainty of the start of a new school year, that first quarter? Are you guys preparing for school like normal, or are you kind of doing a double thing of would it potentially be online, or how does that work? Roger, could you talk to that?
Sure, yeah, and there's no definitive answer for sure because of all the uncertainty that you just said. We don't know what our numbers look like. We don't know what what society will look like, and can't really predict. But I know that plans at the district level and considerations are being done even as we speak about what some options that are out there. Options I've heard shared out at school board meetings might be something where in order to take, like, for example, our middle school that's going to be almost projected to be almost 1,800 students next year, would be to have a quarter of the students come each day. So every day we'd only have 25% of the school on campus, which doing quick math would be about 400 kids. I hope that's right. But that would that would allow classrooms to be able to be socially distanced. So if you think of a class of 35, 40, that to cut only have a quarter of them there, students would be able to be socially distanced. And then passing periods, lunchtime, we would be able to maintain those recommendations. And then that would allow the teachers to have some direct, that interpersonal, which is so important to the learning process. And then the rest of the week, the students would be at home. They'd be, with the Chromebook or with the device and accessing digital learning that way. So I know that that's a thought out there. Have no idea how that would work. There's so many other issues involved with transportation and parents' working schedules. There's just so many issues to consider there, but there's definitely, I know there's a lot of question marks, but I know there's a lot of people considering those. What are some options, and then what might work best for a school?
Yeah, that's really interesting to consider. I mean, just like you said, there's tons of potential issues, transportation, childcare, parents working. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how everything plays out come fall. So for students, obviously there's no decision yet, and I doubt there will be until it gets much, much closer. But is the school board, is there a website? Is that the main thing where people should look to follow information, or how is this information supposed to, disseminate out to the different students?
Sure. Yeah, I would say our, ccsd.net is a very valuable resource. I also like our website a lot. It has some good FES, important information, fesmiddleschool.net, and we have links back to the school district for their information. But yeah, I think that it's, I think there's going to be a lot of decisions, coming up. I think the goal right now is to get the school year closed, allow teachers the chance to get their rooms cleaned and organized to enough of ability so that our custodians can come in and do a deep clean of the building. And then, we'll allow everyone to kind of exhale a little bit. And, I know everyone's been home, but it's different to be home and still have the stress of trying to educate students and your own kids, right? I mean, I know Becky and I both have kids, like they're so it's hard to work and be at home. So I think this is really valuable, needed time for people to just not have to have the worry of school, but to just, really focus on their family and their mental health.
Well said. Focus on family and mental health. That's great. So thank you again so much for joining us. Wendy, Becky, I just wanted to throw it out to you if there's anything else you guys would like to add before we kind of wrap this up.
I think we hit all the good stuff.
Perfect. Well, thank you again for being a part. I really appreciate you guys joining us, taking a moment to kind of have this conversation on distance learning. I think it's a huge challenge for a lot of people, but for educators, you have such an important job. And so thank you so much for being there to start with, for our younger generations and for really teaching and helping lead them. So thank you so much, and we really are happy to have you. So with that, I'll say farewell. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you guys for joining Quantum Arc Live. Our goal is to come to you weekly with conversations on how people are connecting through technology. In particular, we have this pandemic that is really forcing people to think outside the box and find new ways in their industry to connect with students, or to engage with clients, or to find new customers. And so as we do that, we're hoping to have conversations with different industry leaders to do just that. So if you are interested in being on Quantum Arc Live, feel free to shoot us a message and we will talk. Also, if you can go ahead and like or subscribe our channel, that would be a huge help out to us. It'll also give you guys notifications when we go live again for different industries. So thank you so much for joining us. Again, I'm Kate Robison with Quantum Arc Media, and this was an episode of Quantum Arc Live. Thank you.